Hi, this is Peter Andresen with Andresen Associates, and we're trying a new video format this week. I thought I'd better check in. Last week, we made that video. We can see it coming, but we can't tell when. And I guess when was the next day, because that's when Silicon Valley Bank collapsed. As we had described in the video, there's too much debt, interest rates are rising, refinancing is going to become more and more problematic. The Fed has painted itself into a corner. We talked about all that last week. Although the interesting thing about Silicon Valley Bank is, well, there's two things. The first thing is that it was a failure of investment management, which would have resulted in an F grade in Basic Finance 101 in any university. That is, buying long treasuries for that extra 0.5% of yield and then not hedging them to protect the portfolio. Man, I tell you, it's pretty stunning. Warren Buffett said recently, you can tell who's swimming naked when the tide goes out. And the tide always goes out, and we're going to tell who has been swimming naked. That's the way it is with any economic downturn. So this is part of that. This is part of all that. The other thing is that what we saw was a soft bailout, a soft corruption. What we saw was how in the United States, people who want something don't go around with bags of cash. That's illegal. They just set up a system where the very rich get bailed out and the rest of us have to muddle by. And that's not a political statement for one party or the other. It's the way the whole system works. This bailout represented a major blink by the Federal Reserve and the United States Treasury, because they had to protect their buddies, I suppose. But what it does is it contradicts what they're trying to accomplish with fighting inflation. So here's the bottom line of this week's video. They can't do both. They can't do the bank bailout we just saw, where they basically extend insurance to an unlimited degree. They can't bail things out like this. They can't rescue the incompetence of banking decisions made by bankers that necessarily didn't know what they were doing and should have known. They can't bail all that out and still keep interest rates high to fight inflation. So one of two things is going to happen. Either they're going to blink and the interest rate will continue to go down, or they're going to keep raising the interest rates and we'll see more bank failures. And frankly, that's kind of healthy, because part of a recession is that frail companies are culled. It's like wolves eating elk in Minnesota. When wolves cull the herd in Yellowstone, the resulting herd is brutalized but stronger. And unfortunately, that's how economies always work, whether it's capitalism or anything else. We don't want to keep the weak ones around. So a falling tide will reveal who's been swimming naked, so we can watch for that to happen. Bank failures are just part of an economic slowdown, which is looming. Now, the Treasury bill interest rate, to show you how big this is, last week when this all unfolded, or was it this week? Well, time flies when you're having fun. The interest rate on the 6-month Treasury bill fell what felt like about 1%, or about a fifth of its value, in about a day. So there was a major decline in interest rates there that the Fed may or may not like, depending on how serious it is with fighting inflation. And CD rates went up because banks are insecure. So we're still getting 5% plus, but we're getting it in CDs this week. It's going to be interesting. Now, this also was time for all the crazies and all the shrieking heads to come out and talk about the end of the world as we know it. That's just normal for any downturn. And basically, it's normal. It's not something we've seen since 2008, but it is normal. And our portfolios are configured so that they will decline. They'll certainly go down, but they're not going to stay down in the long term, if history is any guide, and they're very conservatively allocated. So what I'm doing now is I'm aiming for patience. I'm weeding the garden. That's getting mutual funds out of there that aren't doing a good job. And here's another big feature of this week, and that is that if the Federal Reserve does surrender to the need to bail out the elites, then what's going to happen is the interest rate's going to fall, stock market's going to soar, valuations will become even more absurd, and that's why we want to be part in the stock market. So right now, we're already very conservative. Selling the rest of the way out probably isn't justified in the long term. Remember, we make every decision with the next 30 years in mind, even though I'm 68. Damn, that's optimistic. So I want to reiterate, I got notes here I'm looking at to make sure I get everything covered, that we don't really know what's going to happen. Either the Fed's going to double down like the European Central Bank just did on fighting inflation. That's what the European Central Bank did yesterday. They said inflation remains the number one goal. If that's true and interest rates stay high, then we'll end up in a recession relatively quickly, and we will muddle by, and stock markets will probably decline, and we'll use that as an opportunity to buy bargains. If they blink and interest rates go down, then we'll have more inflation. A bigger, nastier recession will loom, but not right now, and the stock markets may very well go up. So we don't know what's going to happen. We really don't. And neither do all those talking heads babbling away on various media outlets. So here I am. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful weekend. Patience, enjoy life, and blessings.